I want to share many things when it comes to healing our inner child that I wish I would have heard years ago. And we'll start with a phrase that Matt Kahn shared, where he says, if you knew, I'm paraphrasing, but if you knew the things people have gone through, their behavior wouldn't surprise you. And I look back and I always say, please, first of all, honor what you went through, honor what you experienced and the feelings and the all the painful and challenging emotions that you went through. So honor that. I'm not saying that we shouldn't. I feel like that's a huge part of a healing journey, and just being with those emotions, relaxing your nervous system around that, and breathing, and there's a huge amount of value in that. But I always mention the idea of, similar to that phrase, if you knew what people went through, their behavior wouldn't surprise you. And here's what I realized: the things that I maybe held against my parents or people in my childhood, that eventually you look back and you realize if you put yourself in their shoes, you actually maybe can't even be mad at them. One of the things that I kind of held against my father, for example, that he worked a ton of hours when I was a kid. He was nonstop. He went home for a nap, then had to go back to the restaurant because it was a restaurant and a pub, so he was at night too, and he was a mess. And I felt like he wasn't around much at a specific time in my life. And eventually I sat down with the idea that, how can I be mad at a father who had two young kids trying to make a restaurant work well in a country where the economy was a mess at the time? Things were not getting better, things were actually getting worse. Making that work to try to send your two kids to private school because they wanted a better life for us than what they went through. How can I get mad at that? How can I have no idea what it's like to be a parent, have a house with two kids, a wife, and trying to, because my mother was also working a lot, but it was what you had to do at the time in that economy in my country. It was not easy. Not easy at all. And I can sit here and think, yeah, but I would have done things differently. I would have done this. I would have done that. But there's no way that I can have an idea of what they were going through at the time. Another example I've given in other videos is that my father, his dad passed away when he was young. I think he was around 10 years old. I can't remember right now. He never heard an I love you from his father, which is actually very common in, at least in my country, for people at his age. He's actually turned 60. He turned 60 the end of 2020. So for that generation in my country, I don't know if there's many people that actually heard their father tell them I love you. And in my generation, it's funny that there's sometimes a lot of talk about, from a complaining perspective and point of view, that the past generation didn't maybe show us a lot of love. And I realized, if we look back, I can't speak for other cultures, and even when I speak about my own cultures, please realize I'm just one person. Of course I have my perspective, my point of view, my wounds, my everything. So it doesn't represent exactly my culture. I hope people don't. Just take this with a grain of salt. I think that's the phrase people use, right? I'm not good with phrases in English. But if we look back at the males, so the men in my generation, in my culture, people did not show affection. So how can I get mad at my dad when he said I love you to me for the first time when I was like 29 years old, when he never heard it from his father, and actually not even from his mother, who was an incredible woman. But she had a conversation with my mother once that she was never able to say I love you to her kids out loud. So it's an interesting thing that in previous generations it was so much harder for them to express emotions. It was a whole new world. And same thing that I was thinking today, actually, like generations that actually went through a war, maybe like a world war. Just imagine what they went through as a kid, and we shouldn't ever compare wounds and compare childhoods, because that's not very productive. But sometimes it can be helpful to put ourselves in their shoes and realize what maybe our parents or grandparents have gone through. And when I hear things that my parents have gone through, it puts things into perspective. Like the life they were able to provide for me was incredible, was amazing. And for me to get mad at that, at little things that have happened, if you watch some of my other videos on healing your inner child, I can't be upset. I can't. It's an interesting place to be when you realize that I just can't. I can't. When I realized too, I remember there was a kid in my school, in my grade, who was like one of the very coolest kids in the class. And I, for whatever reason, sometimes was always in like the cool kids club at that age, I think, in middle school. And there was one day that I said something. We were about to go to recess, and I said something out loud. It was all silence because we were all hanging out together, like half the class in the back. And I said something, and he made fun of me really loudly. Everyone there heard, everyone laughed, and I will never forget that, because at the time, I felt like shit. I felt embarrassed, ashamed, like, why did I say that? Why was I so stupid to say that? And so many things. And I was mad at him. I was mad at him for my whole life. Even though I was still friends with him, he's a good guy, I liked him, but for that very little thing that he did, I was mad at him. And now I realize, like, holy shit, what? Because of all the things that happened with him in school, I can't even imagine what he was going through at home. So I can't be mad at him. I can't. I simply can't. And this doesn't justify. So I'm inviting you to consider things in your life that have happened, that maybe you can put it into this perspective, see it from this angle. It never justifies what they did. It doesn't mean that what they did was right, okay, good. It doesn't justify what they did to you. But it definitely puts it in a different perspective. I remember another thing that happened to me when I was a kid in school. We were playing soccer outside. All of a sudden, a kid jumps on my back and chokes me from behind and drops me to the ground. And he's trying to choke me. I think I was around 10 years old. I had no clue what was going on. I didn't know what was happening. At 10 years old, he was actually a year younger than me. So like a 9-year-old kid trying to choke me in school, in recess. And I'm like, what the fuck is going on? When people like separated us, and he didn't like go through it too much. Like I feel like he kind of realized what he was doing was insane. When he let me go, he showed me a little gold chain that broke while we were playing soccer. So he was blaming me, which maybe it happened, like I don't even know. He was blaming me for that chain getting broke apart. And he jumped on me from behind on my back trying to choke me. At the time and throughout my life I was like, that kid is not right in his head. Like, I never understood what happened. It was like a little too much, I felt like, right? And now looking back and realizing, like, I can't even imagine for a kid to react that way at that age. What kind of things must he be going through at the time at home? Or what kind of things did he go through in the past? I can't be mad at him. I can't. I just simply can't. And I'm glad that life has given me this perspective now, that I can see it this way, because maybe they couldn't. And I'm like, it's okay that you took it out on me if you were going through hell at home. I'd rather you take it out on me because I can handle it. Doesn't mean that I welcome that behavior now. Doesn't mean that if I have a kid, I will teach them to welcome that behavior. Of course not. But I think there's an idea that I heard a long time ago that sometimes people are going through so much that they take it out on someone. And sometimes maybe they feel, this is a much deeper topic that would be like a whole hour, I think. But in a way, the guy that made fun of me, people that have made fun of us, people that bully us, in a way, you didn't know it at the time, but maybe you eventually were going to have the tools, we're going to have the wisdom, the perspective to be able to heal that, be able to go through it, get through it, see it from a different perspective, and maybe, this is a crazy thought, but maybe even they just getting it out on you at that time could have even saved their lives. If you think about it, if people are going through crazy, people go through hell sometimes and we have no idea what's going on in their homes. So now that I've grown up, now that I've heard crazy things and I realize what people have gone through in the past, it makes you even appreciate them. Like people that I've been bullied in school, in high school, I've been made fun of, and in a way it makes you even appreciate them. You even feel bad for them. And that's the beauty of compassion, because compassion can help you heal those wounds that, kind of like what Mike Kant said, like when you know what people have gone through, their behavior doesn't surprise you. So you develop compassion for them, compassion for yourself, for the version of you when you were younger that went through that. And that compassion, in my experience, is priceless, because of course you're never going to do that to anyone, because you know what it's like to be on the receiving end of someone making fun of you really badly, someone treating you like crap, someone being actually very aggressive towards you. You know what it's like to be on the receiving end of that. You wouldn't do that ever to anyone, and you're actually also breaking the cycle, stopping that cycle, because you won't teach that to your kids, for example. I think there's many things that have happened through generations that, thank God, we're getting to a point in history where many of those things are stopping. There's a lot of kids that were either physically abused, beat up by their parents. There's many people that were actually sexually abused, and I think that's a topic that we should be talking about more. I went through a workshop many years ago that we were actually, a lot of us were actually coaches, and people started to actually open up about their experience with sexual abuse when they were a kid, and it was mind-blowing and heartbreaking at the same time to see how many people had been sexually abused. It was a very high percentage of the people in that room, and it breaks your heart to see that. And at the same time, all those people were healing their wounds, were actually getting help, opening up, being vulnerable. And realizing that we're at a time in history that this can't keep going on, this has to stop, and we need to do something about it. So it's a fascinating thing to consider that when you start to go deeper into this healing journey, and when you start to, of course you need to sometimes go through other stages first, like acceptance. You need to go through forgiveness, of course. You need to maybe forgive them for what they did, forgive yourself for sometimes people allowing themselves to put you through that, or whatever it might be. Forgive yourself for judging yourself as you went through that, forgiving yourself for beating yourself up for going through that experience. And I have a lot of videos on forgiveness if you need to, if you need some support with that. Let me know below if you need some help with that. But after we go through those stages, sometimes eventually you reach that place where maybe you go through a stage of self-love and you realize how important that is. And eventually we realize how the compassion towards ourselves, and even compassion to the people that hurt us, to the people that maybe disappointed you, to the people that maybe took advantage of you, to the people that treated you like crap, having compassion towards them is one of the most healing things that we can do. And I always say that we shouldn't force compassion. I actually have a video called how to develop compassion naturally. I don't think these things can be forced. I don't think they should be forced. And when they're forced, they typically don't work, or they might seem like they're working, but they're not going deep at all. It's a very superficial level of compassion. So I talk a lot about not forcing these things. Naturally, as you explore these ideas that I shared, and I explore maybe the ideas that I shared in that video about compassion, you will see that you drop a little seed and you don't force it to grow. Over time, day by day, you remember to be a little more compassionate with yourself. You realize that you're being pretty judgmental towards yourself, pretty hard on yourself, that you put expectations on yourself that are not very realistic at all. And then over time, slowly, you start to be a little more gentle with yourself. You start to be a little more accepting with yourself. You start to be more compassionate with yourself naturally, without forcing it. Yes, it will take time. Or maybe something that I said just kind of clicks and you have a pretty significant shift. But it might take time. I've noticed that for me, I was pretty hard on myself for most of my life, and now looking back, compassion feels so natural to me. But of course I wasn't always that way. Of course I went through a stage of being really hard on myself. I went through a stage of not liking myself at all. I went through a stage of hating myself, and I went through stages that were not fun, that were not easy to go through. But over time, and I think that's why I wanted to make this video, because it's not easy, and I've realized I want to make videos that I wish I would have had 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. And I think if I heard this idea, maybe when I was starting on my self-development journey, inner work journey, spiritual journey, it would have been extremely helpful. So this video is a little long, but I really hope it helped. If you watched this far and it helped, please let me know with a comment or a little thumbs up. It also really helps with the algorithm, so that hopefully someone else that might be going through something similar can see this video, because otherwise my videos are not going to reach a lot of people. So I would really appreciate it if you give it a little thumbs up, maybe even share it, send it to someone. And if you want to go a little deeper, I would love for you to join our private group. You can go to my website, gonzaloquartz.com. You can sign up for the free newsletter, and once you sign up for the free newsletter, you get a link to the free group. And if you want to explore these a little deeper, if you feel like you need more help, you need more support, then hopefully I'll be able to help you even more directly through that group. And that's it. I really, really, really hope it helped. Thank you so much.